Hi, everybody. Well, it is such a pleasure to be with you this afternoon and talk with you a little bit about the risks and responsibilities of leadership. And I wanted to tell you why I picked this topic. A couple of years ago, I was speaking with a group of women in Wisconsin who are local government professionals, and I asked them, there were about 50 of them, and I said, I passed out an index card and asked them to fill out on one side what excited them about being a local government leader, and on the other side, what made them nervous or scared about it. And their responses really crystallized a lot of what I had been hearing in my work as an executive recruiter. And what excited them was about making a difference in their community and making a difference in their organization. But what made them nervous was the possibility of losing their position, because if you are a city manager and you report to a group of elected officials, that can happen. They were also nervous about the enormity of the responsibility of actually taking that on. And then many were also nervous about balancing family and career with that. So those were the things that I thought, as I thought about what to talk about with all of you today, I wanted to kind of discuss that whole piece because I think that it plays into a fear of failure that many of us have. So we don't take that next step sometimes because we're afraid. Right now I'm afraid I'm not going to get the slide to advance. Hold on here. I'm sorry, it's not advancing. Can somebody advance my slide? It's on, yeah. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, well, it's still not advancing, but I know what I know what these slides are. So I'm going to continue talking, and when they kick in, we'll continue to advance them. So you can, okay, that would be great. Thanks very much. So one of the things, as I said, the risks and responsibilities are often tied to a fear of failure and an inability to take that next step because we're so afraid that we might not be able to be successful. And that becomes a cycle. So one of the great things about coming to Illinois State University, and I just loved my time here, was it was a real laboratory for leadership. And it was an opportunity for me to not only get academic knowledge and experience in political science and in public management, but it also allowed me to try out different things with student organizations. And I had the ability to really test out my personal values, different leadership styles, and learn some lessons that I thought would be very important as I move forward. Now, I didn't know any of this when I came here. I didn't know I was going to be learning any lessons. I was, in fact, terrified when I stepped on campus. I was so scared. I still picture coming in and seeing that water tower. So I was very much afraid of what I was getting into. But one of the first lessons that I had was right after my freshman year in college, I went to work at, it was a company, it was a factory, because I could make a lot of money very quickly, and I worked on an assembly line. And in doing that work, I was placed next to a man who was operating a machine that he operated, for 25 years, and it kept breaking down. And every time it broke down, the people in the white shirts with the black ties would come down and they'd try and fix it, and they wouldn't be able to do it. So they'd move him to something else. So this went on for many days. And finally, he looked at me one day and he said, I know what's wrong with this machine. And I said, you do? Why don't you tell them? And he said, they never ask me. So this was a management lesson that I never forgot that. I never forgot that very simple exchange. So as I went on to be involved in management and leadership and wanted to change something or wanted to order new equipment, I always made sure that the people who were closest to it had their opinion heard, and that I was talking with them and hearing their point of view, because they're often the ones that know best. And I never forgot that. So that was a great lesson. The next thing that happened was working for the Vedette. And that did not come about very easily. So remember, I worked at the factory. Another person who worked at the factory was the news editor for the Vedette. He worked where my dad worked. I did not ever meet him there. But my dad had told him that I had worked on my student newspaper in high school. So when we got back to school, he called me and invited me for an interview at the Vedette. And I was so afraid I couldn't go. I just couldn't do it. I couldn't even get out of my dorm room and go for the interview. So I made up some excuse and I didn't go. And then 6 months later, he called me again. Well, this time I needed money. So it's like, all right, I'm going to go for the interview because it's a paying job. And I went and I got the job and I loved it. It was life-altering. It pushed me out of my comfort zone. It helped me, put me into different rooms and circles of people that I never would have anticipated. It was just a wonderful experience. And I went on to become the assistant news editor there, which was also a terrific challenge. So in that case, I was able to overcome my fear of failure by this outside pressure of needing money. So sometimes things, play out that way. Let's see, I'm still not able to advance it. So the next thing that happened, I don't know if any of you were around here at the time and remember a restaurant called White Horse. It was a very popular restaurant. It was not too far from here. And I worked there as a waitress, also to make money. And one of the days when I was working there, the manager came in and he told me that this woman who was also a waitress, he was not going to put her on the schedule anymore. He was essentially firing her. But he was going to let her find out by walking in and seeing that she was crossed off the schedule. He was not going to tell her. And I said, you can't do that. I know she's on her way here, and you have to tell her that she's fired. And he said, well, if you want her to know, you tell her. It was not my decision. I was not a supervisor. But I thought, well, I can't let her walk into this room where all of the waitresses are and the cooks and look at the schedule and find out that she was losing her job that way. So I waited for her outside and I told her what had happened. I was terrified. But again, I overcame that fear because I felt so badly about what was going to happen to her. And again, another management and leadership lesson, because it's so important. If that's your responsibility, if it's you're the final authority on whether someone is laid off or they're losing their job due to progressive discipline, I firmly believe you have to be the one sitting across the table from them, and that's what I've always done in my career. But something, again, that I learned very early in life. So these experiences help us as we try to deal with our fear of failure. And the last one was running for Student Association president. And it was just such a great experience. I loved it. And what I loved about it, I didn't even see coming. I so enjoyed meeting the other students, working with all of the different residence halls, working with the sororities and the fraternities, and dealing with the administration, sometimes in an adversarial way. But often, we were able to collaborate and talk about things that were important to students. So that sort of was another piece, that communication that you all were talking about earlier, was another piece to my management and leadership style. So I think the other thing that kind of holds us back is that fear of how we balance this significant career opportunity with a family. And that is something that I've always, struggled with, that balance. And there's a quote that you'll see it on the PowerPoint, where you'll be able to pull it up. But it's from Sheryl Sandberg, who wrote Lean In, and she talks about the need. She said one of the most here we go. She said one of the most important things that you can do for your career is to select the right partner. And that means the person who's going to support you, who's in your corner and wants you to be the best that you can be. And I have to say, that is one thing I did really well. So I don't know if you can get to the, oh, that's Randy. Oh, stay on that for a minute. That's Randy and I when we were Student Association president and vice president. So which was then and which was now, I'll just let you guys try to decide. But we can go to the next slide. This is a great book. It's all about building your inner confidence. I highly recommend it. It'll help you, tap into those skills that'll let you be the best that you can be. And it's Presence by Amy Cuddy. She also has a TED Talk. And then we could go to the next one. And then one more. We talked about Sheryl Sandberg. And then there we are. So I've been very blessed, and I take her advice to heart. And we can go to the next one. That's enough of that. So it never became more important than when I had the opportunity to be the village manager for Wilmette. I was 31 years old. I had a 1-year-old daughter. My son would later be born while I was village manager, and it was a big job. 210 employees, 26,000 residents. But the reason I desperately wanted that job, even though against all odds, the odds were against me to get it. Only 13% of city managers are women, and they're definitely not 31 years old. But I was so passionate about the organization and the changes that I wanted to make. my boss at that time is a dear friend to this day, but he had a very different management and leadership style, and I felt that it wasn't working well for our organization, and I wanted to do things differently. And so this was an opportunity for me to overcome my fear because of my passion for the position. I really tried very hard not to think about all the ways that I could screw up in that job, but it was just easier to focus on the positive things, and it was a great experience. I thoroughly loved it. Then I decided I wanted to get into recruitment and selection because I liked that very much, and I wanted a next stage in my career, and did that for a number of years for a different company. And when the owner of that company passed away, I had the opportunity to buy it, and I mean, for a very small amount of money. And I didn't do it again. I was afraid. I had that fear, you know, that I wasn't going to be able to run this company. What do I know about running a company? So I didn't do it. I actually found a buyer, and it was a disaster. So I ended up, the buyer came in, I was president, it didn't work out. He took it in a direction I didn't agree with. So I finally went out on my own and started my own business, which people had been, including my husband, had been encouraging me to do for many years. So I did that, and we formed GovTemps and GovHR USA with one other person, another woman and I, and we've grown it to 12 full-time employees, 20 consultants, and we work in 30 different states. And it ended up being a great success. But again, I had to be backed into the corner to do that. I had to get to the point where I hated so much what that new owner was doing before I would take that step. So I think I guess my point is this is something we struggle with throughout our career. And I think that we have to be cognizant of it, we have to prepare for it, and we have to try and overcome it so that we can really take that job and take that opportunity. Oh, that's me and the kids. And I guess the thing I want to say about that as I look back on being a parent who worked outside the home, it's a challenge. And you get caught up in what I call the perfection trap, where you're trying to be perfect at work, and you're trying to be the perfect mother, and you're trying to be the perfect wife, and you're trying to be the perfect daughter, or whatever it is. And we can drive ourselves crazy. So I think we have to get a hold of that. We have to try to not be guilty and pull back and have perspective from time to time. So it's very hard, and we need to talk to one another about that and come up with coping mechanisms. But what I want to leave you with is a quote from Billie Jean King. And it's just a great quote because she talks about pressure being a privilege. And how, when you think about taking these responsibilities on or these new challenges, you feel pressure, and I think that's what makes us afraid. But she viewed it as a privilege, and I loved it when she says, give me the ball, let's go. I'm ready to take that on. So I guess that would be my advice. Take the ball, go for it. It's really been a pleasure to talk with you, and feel free to call me if you think I can help you in any way in your future career. But good luck to all of you. Thank you.